Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, The Way Forward. My name is Madeline, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Christian.
Great to see you all again. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you back. We won't be including a review today, but we will be referring back to concepts that we've previously discussed. In our first and second episodes, Christian talked about interpersonal dynamics and communication within difficult relationships. And the consistent underlying theme we've conveyed so far is the importance of responding in a conscious, deliberate manner rather than reacting emotionally and defensively.
And part of that process is learning to choose responses that serve the dignity of you and others for whom you care.
Which brings us to the title of this week's episode, Altruism. The attitude of unselfish caring about the welfare of others and doing acts that help others without benefit to oneself or expectation of a return. Altruism is motivated by the emotion empathy, and acts of kindness are the chosen outward behaviors generated by this attitude. These principles and techniques are not only used in psychology, but also in business, for example, team building, communications, and problem solving, and negotiations involved in crisis situations, for example, in law enforcement. And today we're going to discuss how and why this works in relationships at both the psychological and the physiological levels. Firstly, let's take a look at the following slide because I want to show you just what you're up against when you're trying to be persuasive with somebody who refuses to negotiate fairly in their communication.
So what we are really looking at here is a series of hurdles that you must conquer to get from first stage of conveying a message to somebody to the final stage where the other person exhibits the desired action. Let's have a quick look at the flow of actions and responses as they follow each other. Well, first of all, you've got to be in a situation or in a set of circumstances where you can get the person to pay attention to your message. Then secondly, the question is whether they even comprehend what you're trying to get across. Now, the question is, do they believe what you're saying or not? Do they remember it? And will they behave accordingly in the fashion that you're expecting? And then finally, will they take action not only now, but consistently? So it is probably clear at this point that this set of challenges looks like an Olympic hurdle race, and the chances that your message gets across are not at all guaranteed. You can also see that at every single juncture, the paying attention, the comprehension, the belief, the remembering, the behaving accordingly, and the action, at every single one of those junctures, there is the possibility that the person will take absolutely no action. And people are very often flabbergasted why, when they explain something carefully, there is no action. But we don't understand that the movement from paying attention to a message to actually taking an action has multiple stages in between, each at which you can fail for your message to get across. The obvious question is, how can we possibly overcome this uphill challenge so that we are heard, understood, and taken seriously, and so that we are effectively able to elicit the behavior that we desire?
We're going to talk about the happiness effect. So there is more happiness in giving than in receiving. We've heard this all our lives, but it's supported by research. It turns out that performing acts of kindness improves one's happiness, whether for a friend, a relative, a stranger, or oneself. Even observing acts of kindness positively affects one's happiness. In other words, kindness is contagious and can create a ripple effect that inspires others to do likewise, because kindness involves being authentic and welcoming others to do the same, to treat oneself and others with compassion and understanding. In fact, of all of the literature in the field of psychology, the happiness effect from helping others is one of the most consistent findings documented, and this applies to both children and adults. Even a sincere, kind gesture, a word, a touch, or a listening ear has a powerful effect on the giver's mental and physical health. Helping others also boosts self-worth, and donating, acts of charity, these activate regions of the brain linked with reward. And we experience these effects throughout the entire nervous system. For both the giver and the receiver, kindness boosts production of feel-good hormones such as serotonin, dopamine, and natural endorphins, which are your body's natural painkillers, and fosters a sense of belonging while building and strengthening relationships. And kindness is good for the heart because it generates oxytocin, which in turn reduces blood pressure and the stress hormone cortisol. Today we'll take a closer look at what is known as the love hormone, oxytocin. It's also referred to as the happy hormone or bonding hormone. So oxytocin is both a hormone and a neurotransmitter. It's associated with trust, empathy, and relationship building. It is released in the brain and enters the bloodstream when a mother breastfeeds her infant, during intimacy between couples, and interestingly, in both dogs and their owners when they lock gazes. But our focus today is the effects of oxytocin that's produced as a response to acts of kindness in both the giver and the receiver. In fact, studies involving the intranasal administration of oxytocin have been shown to reduce anxiety, irritability, and the intrusive recollections endured by trauma survivors. And oxytocin not only reduces stress and anxiety levels, but it also has a positive impact on social behaviors related to relaxation, trust, and general psychological stability. Now, oxytocin levels are controlled via a feedback loop, whereby the hormone stimulates more of its own release. And there are natural ways to produce and release oxytocin. In studies, saliva tests confirm a spike of oxytocin following exercise, listening to music, and even singing in a group, which enhances bonding between individuals. As well, giving a massage, cuddling, hugs, lovemaking enhance oxytocin levels, leading to an increased sense of well-being. Even a simple act of touch can boost these levels. In other words, we can induce the release of this happy hormone and alter our inner environment by our chosen behaviors. The release of these happy hormones, well, they create a feedback loop that confirm that there's relative safety, and your threat detections can now calm down. This in turn gives you more brain capacity so that you can think and you can begin to undo some faulty thinking patterns that have resulted from chronic stress that you've endured from your environment. And then we have the psychosocial level. So in episode 1, we spoke of life scripts that are running beyond our conscious awareness. And we participate in each other's subconscious life script, whether we're mutually reinforcing them or altering them by our interactions. And by demonstrating acts of kindness and compassion, you are changing your own inner state of being, while simultaneously, and quite literally, altering the psychophysiological state of the other person, thus their subsequent behavior and their attitudes. By your outward behavior, you are also shifting the paradigm of your environment. Others detect these changes in your behavioral patterns and now must alter their behavior to reestablish their place in the relationship or within a social group. Thus, the power base begins to shift, and you can now begin to reclaim your personal power, your self-agency that is fair, built on valor earned, on trust, and on dignity. And we're going to discuss now ways of interacting that can help us to accomplish this. Christian, can you take it from here?
Thank you so much, Madeline. I'm maybe move to something in terms of practical application. So to start with, what I would like to remind you of is a slide that we had previously shown. And this is the psychophysiology of stress. We are constantly potentially in a stress cycle, especially when we're interacting with people that we've previously had negative experiences with. On the slide, what you can see here, everything in the orange oval is a stress cycle. You experience pressure, you become hypervigilant, your body reacts to that scenario, and all the more noise occurs in your head. You basically can't think straight and your behavior alters. But at the same time, we're today talking not only about the stress hormones that are released in this stress cycle, but we're also talking about the feel-good hormones, the oxytocin that is released when you choose well thought out ways of thinking and well-planned language, as well as choosing behaviors that are kind, caring, and truly loving. So in discussing kind, caring, and loving behavior in relationships, we've got to have a quick look at what a functional relationship looks like. Well, the slide here would show you that a relationship fundamentally thrives on two drivers. On the x-axis, you see dignity. What I mean by that is it your choice or is it your goal in an interaction to be right, to subjugate the other person, to win the argument, or is it your goal to leave that interaction with the relationship in better shape than it was before, in such a way that the other person doesn't feel beaten but helped? And if you can sustain that pattern with another person, it is also true that over time, trust is ever more built. But the question, of course, is how do we protect mutual dignity? You know, we have conversations with people and things get heated up. And in the moment, we sort of lose ourselves. Are there ways in which we can make sure that there is a tone that is both dignified and respectful? Can we set that tone by thinking about it in advance of having a crucial conversation? And this, of course, brings us to the old idea of conflict. I want to share with you strategies in handling and managing conflict regardless of the direction of that conflict. On the slide, you can see here outgoing conflict versus incoming. Quickly to clarify, what I mean by outgoing is you know that you need to have a crucial conversation with somebody. It's important. And in incoming, what I mean is unexpectedly somebody comes and confronts you. So there are different ways in which you can approach that stressful situation. Remember that the more deliberately you act in any of these situations, the more you appear to have control, that you're well composed. Your feedback loop tells you that you're doing well. You in fact feel better, and that also has a reciprocal impact on the person with whom you're interacting. So let's take these one by one. Let's start with the outgoing side. Imagine you know that you have something really important to discuss with your spouse, your better half. Well, there are a few things that you need to get in place, because remember that when you're in the situation face to face with that person, you're going to be stressed already. You need to have found your words before you have that conversation. So a good idea is to plan an opener and to think about the value that that conversation might have from the perspective of the person that you're speaking with. Don't only think of the value for yourself, but how this might benefit the both of you. I will later on show you what such an opener might sound like. Secondly, you have to think of how you can provide fair and dignified feedback. And what I mean by dignified is giving feedback in such a way that it feels balanced and that you can credit the person with both what they do well, but then also ask them what you would like them to alter or change. And then, of course, you need to be ready to ask questions that will elicit their ideas. And you've got to be ready to listen as if you want to learn. So there are a few techniques that I often discuss with my clients that I coach, and that is paraphrasing, Good listening means that you listen in order to be able to tell the person what you took from what they told you. You can also help the person prioritize if they're complaining about a specific set of problems or things that they're noticing, things that they're unhappy with. Help them prioritize. You can perhaps ask them, so of these 3 or 4 points, which one do you think we should work on first? And then, of course, folks, validate. And by validate, I don't mean that you should necessarily agree with everything that your counterpart tells you, but you should show them that you deem the issue serious enough to give it your proper attention. Now, no crucial conversation is ever over. In fact, no real meeting about anything is really over until you two have decided what the practical, achievable steps are that you're going to follow up. This is where you strike a deal, where you strike a social agreement with your partner. So make the steps practical, make them achievable. Ensure that you're not trying to boil the ocean, but that instead you're trying to heat up a cup of water at a time so that you can reward yourself with successes. Now, of course, these principles are true principles that apply in any relationship. Relationships are back and forth agreements in the second and in the minute. So we are constantly making tiny agreements with each other. If you structure your crucial conversations in a fashion that the other person feels that A, they are visible, B, they are heard, and C, that their priorities are genuinely considered, you are starting to build a platform for a relationship that actually contains dignity. I'm going to switch now to perhaps the more terrifying scenario, and that is incoming conflict. You're minding your own business, and the next moment, as I said in a previous delivery, an angry face comes around the corner, and there are accusations leveled at you, a tone of voice that is angry, raised, etc., and you're overwhelmed with just a torrent of negative input. And it is now where you really have to have your business together. Instead of starting with an apology, because that is what we want to do most often, we want to apologize and make the other person go away, or we want to start self-defending or shouting back, matching the tone. How about we practice validating the fact that the person is concerned about something that actually matters? So let's be crystal clear. By validating, I am not saying that you should agree with everything that the accuser levels at you whatsoever. What I'm referring to, in fact, is that you explain to your counterpart that you're willing to take the issue as seriously as they do. So, for instance, you might say to them, I can see that this is a big issue for you and that this concerns you a great deal, or this frustrates you incredibly. I'm going to put my things aside and I'm going to pay attention to this because this is important for both of us. Did you notice that I did not agree with their accusation, but I said to them that they have my full attention? And so then we return to the theme of asking good questions. I think it is important to get your counterpart speaking, because when people feel heard, they feel that they matter. And when they feel that they matter in our eyes and in our ears, they feel that they are being honored. And that in turn already serves to help change the body chemistry in themselves. So again, the goal of good listening is to be able to paraphrase what you had heard. And if you're not sure that you understood, you can clarify. You can say, could you just go over this again? Or could you just give me another example of what you're referring to? It is okay because they are being listened to. Try to paraphrase, try to pick out the key points that you think you are hearing. so that you can be corrected if you're wrong, or you can be acknowledged if you're right. Again, help the person prioritize. We cannot prioritize everything. If everything's important, then nothing is important. So you might say to your counterpart, of these 3 or 4 items, what do you think we can start working on the best together? And what do you think we should prioritize that will serve the both of us the best? And always validate. Keep on indicating to your counterpart that this is important enough to deserve your best attention. As you can see thus far, I'm constantly looking at the value for the other person. So in both outgoing and incoming cases, if I comport myself in such a way that I prioritize value for the other person, I am winning. And I'm not winning by beating them. I'm winning by winning with them. And that is why I keep on saying, prioritize what can be worked on and what can be tackled together. Now, it is said, and I believe this, that occasionally an apology is owed. Perhaps you were wrong, or perhaps you simply feel that it is sad that the other person was so upset. And there's nothing wrong with giving a sincere apology, but I don't believe that it is productive or even authentic to start a difficult conversation with an apology, because you weaken your own stance and you diminish your credibility in so doing. Please remember, never ever leave a crucial conversation without practical, achievable steps. You have your counterpart right there. You've just perhaps had a bit of a victory by actually having a productive conversation. Target those practical, achievable steps. Make sure that you can look each other in the eye going forward and saying, yes, we've done it, as small as it might have been. I mentioned to you earlier that I was going to show you a practical application of how to open a crucial conversation. So I'm going to end my part of the session today with this. For crucial conversations of whatever nature, I like to have a conversation opener ready. And in this case, what I tend to use is called an I, we, you opener. It helps me sort my ideas. It helps me stay calm. It helps me plan so that I can imbue the conversation with the right tone. So the I in that opener deals with why I'm here, and it sort of sets the tone initially. So for example, you might say to your counterpart that, I wanted to sit down with you privately, away from the noise, away from the kids, away from all distractions, so that you and I can talk about our last conversation and why we both ended up being so upset. Well, now at least the person understands that there is respect, that there is dignity. And you're also signaling to them that you gave this issue a real thought and that this is not a knee-jerk reaction. And then I'm ready to move to the we part. Well, the we part is all about what can we do together? What is my part in what I'm going to discuss with you? And what am I hoping you will do in return during that discussion to make the discussion fruitful? So in this case, you might say to them, you know what, I would like to explain to you what I had in mind previously, but I also wanted to hear from you how it made you feel and what you think we both could have done differently had we been more thoughtful. And this is, of course, then an invitation to have an equal conversation where both people have the platform and where both people can be listened to. Again, it sets tone, it sets dignity. And finally, with an opener like this, I always think about what is the goal in terms of value for the other person. And I would like to say to them that my goal is that you would feel listened to and that you will know that I'm here to truly be your partner, to love you and to support you. You can manage really difficult conversations by setting the tone up front. The problem is that we typically plunge into conversations. We react as we normally do instead of responding, instead of giving it some thought. And back to our stress cycle, the only things that we really have control over is how we think, how we speak, and how we behave. And the difference between reacting and response is a little bit of time and a little bit of planning in this case.
Thank you so much, Christian. And what this all boils down to is that you can introduce new rules of engagement through your actions. But be firm and be fair when you set your rules. And it is important that you understand that changes are incremental, oftentimes slow and subtle. Also be prepared that your counterpart might even lash out at you at first. Persist. Be patient. They need to detect a new pattern of consistent behavior in you. I'm going to share this with you. Attitudes follow behavior. You have to behave the way you want to feel to induce that feeling. Studies have even confirmed that when depressed individuals walk with their head up and their arms swinging, they feel better. This isn't just a placebo effect. Blood and saliva tests, they confirm biochemical changes in the body. So when you become more consciously and deliberately aware of your verbal and your behavioral responses, they won't necessarily feel natural at first, but with time and practice, they will become more natural to you. And as you begin to observe incremental shifts within yourself and the resultant changes in your relationships, it will become more and more an integrated part of who you are. And this is really important, folks. People smell fear like sharks smell blood. To be convincing to others so that you're taken seriously, you have to believe it yourself, that you are worthy of dignity and respect. But first, you must be prepared to show by example. And as your confidence grows in your new state of inner being, you will find others are more drawn to you. It may not happen with your spouse or your family member, but they too will observe the way others respond in your presence, and that will force them to recalibrate the way they perceive you. Also understand that the example you set includes knowing when to extract yourself from a toxic interaction or situation. You're not a doormat, nor someone else's punching bag. This too will signal to others around you that you've drawn a new line in the sand, an assertive set of boundaries rooted in self-agency, rather than reactive and defensive boundaries that only serve to signal fear and mistrust. You see, when we put up hard defensive walls around us, it begets defensiveness. It is counterintuitive because it puts the other on guard. It signals to them that, number one, they've already been judged, fairly or unfairly. And number two, that without your fortress, you can be conquered and dominated. Take a quick look at this slide, folks. It is a quote by Morgan Freeman, and it perfectly describes this internal locus of control or self-agency that we keep coming back to. To paraphrase, self-control is strength. Calmness is mastery. There is also a deeper esoteric level to this discussion that we may open down the road for those interested. But for now, your journey involves rewriting your life script so that you can live a deliberate, conscious, and purposeful life. And part of that process is learning to choose your responses rather than merely reacting to life situations. Again, you are 50% of any social interaction in which you affect your own and the other's psychology and physiology. By learning to respond in a calm, measured way, you are changing your inner state of being and influencing your environment. This is your power, folks. This is what the gurus, the masters, yogis, mystics, and Jesus himself have taught for thousands of years. Do not underestimate it, and don't weaponize it. Use it for self-growth, and always endeavor to leave your environment and your relationships in a better place. When you start to shift the paradigm around you, people will treat you differently, and you will begin to see that others mirror who you believe you are. So let it be your mission to believe that you are enough and that you are inherently worthy.
That was an amazing summary, Madeline. Thank you so much. It was great to sit in with you again. And to everybody out there, I wish you my very best.
Thank you, Christian. I enjoyed it as well. And to all those out there listening, we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, and bye for now.